Srimad Bagavatam, first canto, chapter 15, text number 27. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 Desha Kala Artha Yuktani Shrit Tapa Upashamani Cha Haranti Smarta Chittam Govinda Abhihitani Desha Kalarta Yuktani Rittapo Pashamani Cha Haranta Smaratas Chittam Govinda Vihitani Me Govinda Vihitani Me Desha Kalarta Yuktani Rittapo Pashamani Cha Haranti Smaratas Chittam Govinda Vihitani Me Ladies, Yuktani, impregnated with, lit, the heart, tapa, burning, ushamani, extinguishing, cha, and ardanti, are attracting, smarta, by remembering, chittam, mind, Govinda, the Supreme Personality of Pleasure, Abhihitani, narrated by, Nay, unto me. Translation and purport by Srila Prabhupada. Now I am attracted to those instructions imparted to me by the personality of Godhead, Govinda, because they are impregnated with instructions for relieving the burning heart in all circumstances of time and space. Herein Arjuna refers to the instruction of the Bhagavad Gita, which was imparted to him by the Lord in the battlefield of Kurukshetra. The Lord left behind him the instructions of the Bhagavad Gita, not for the benefit of Arjuna alone, but also for all time and in all lands. The Bhagavad Gita being spoken by the Supreme Personality of Godhead is the essence of all Vedic wisdom. It is nicely presented by the Lord Himself for all who have very little time to go through the vast Vedic literatures like the Upanishads, Puranas, and Vedanta Sutras. It is put within the study of the great historical epic, Mahabharata, which is especially prepared for the less intelligent class, namely the women, the laborers, and those who are worthless descendants of the Brahmanas, Kshatriyas, and higher sections of the Vaishyas. The problem which arose in the heart of Arjuna in the battle of Kurukshetra was solved by the teachings of the Bhagavad Gita. Again, after the departure of the Lord from the vision of earthly people, when Arjuna was face to face with being vanquished in his acquired power and prominence, he wanted to again remember the great teachings of the Bhagavad Gita, just to teach all concerned that the Bhagavad Gita can be consulted in all critical times, not only for solace from all kinds of mental agonies, but also for the way out of great entanglement which may embarrass one in some critical hour. The merciful Lord left behind Him the great teachings of the Bhagavad Gita, so that one can take the instructions of the Lord even when He is not visible to material eyesight. Material senses cannot have any estimation of the Supreme Lord, but by His inconceivable power, the Lord can incarnate Himself to the sense perception of the conditioned souls in a suitable manner through the agency of matter, which is also another form of the Lord's manifested energy. Thus, the Bhagavad Gita, or any authentic scriptural sound representation of the Lord, is also the incarnation of the Lord. There is no difference between the sound representation of the Lord and the Lord Himself. One can derive the same benefit from the Bhagavad Gita as Arjuna did in the personal presence of the Lord. The faithful human being who is desirous of being liberated from the clutches of material existence can very easily take advantage of the Bhagavad Gita. And with this in view, the Lord instructed Arjuna as if Arjuna were in need of it. In the Bhagavad Gita, 5 important factors of knowledge have been delineated pertaining to 1, Supreme Lord, 2, the living entity, 3, nature, 4, time and space, and 5, the process of activity. Out of these, the Supreme Lord and the living being are qualitatively one. The difference between the two has been analyzed as the difference between the whole and the part and parcel. Nature is inert matter displaying the interaction of 3 different modes. As eternal time and unlimited space are considered to be beyond the existence of the material nature. Activities of the living being are different varieties of aptitudes which can entrap or liberate the living being within and without material nature. All these subject matters are concisely discussed in the Bhagavad Gita, and later the subject matters are elaborated in the Srimad Bagavatam for further enlightenment. Out of the 5 subjects, the Supreme Lord, the living entity, nature, and time and space are eternal, but the living entity, nature, and time are under the direction of the Supreme Lord, who is absolute and completely independent of any other control. The Supreme Lord is the supreme controller. The material activity of the living being is beginningless, but it can be rectified by transferal into the spiritual quality. Thus it can cease its material qualitative reactions. Both the Lord and the living entity are cognizant, and both of them have the sense of identification, of being conscious as a living force. But the living being, under the condition of material nature, called Mahatattva, misidentifies himself as being different from the Lord. The whole scheme of Vedic wisdom is targeted to the aim of eradicating such a misconception and thus liberating the living being from the illusion of material identification. When such an illusion is eradicated by knowledge and renunciation, the living beings are responsible actors and enjoyers also. The sense of enjoyment in the Lord is real, but such a sense in the living being is sort of a wishful desire only. This difference in consciousness is the distinction between the distinction of the two identities, namely the Lord and the living entity. Otherwise, there is no difference between the Lord and the living entity. The living being is therefore eternally one and different simultaneously. The whole instruction of the Bhagavad Gita stands on this principle. In the Bhagavad Gita, the Lord and the living beings are both described as Sanatana, or eternal, and the Lord's abode, far beyond the material sky, is described also as Sanatana. The living being is invited to live in the Sanatana existence of the Lord, and the process which can help a living entity to approach the Lord's abode, where the liberated activity of the soul is exhibited, is called Sanatana Dharma. One cannot, however, reach the eternal abode of the Lord without being free from the misconception of material identification, and the Bhagavad Gita gives us the clue how to achieve this stage of perfection. The process of being liberated from the misconception of material identification is called in different stages: fruitive activity, empiric philosophy, and devotional service, up to transcendental realization. Such transcendental realization is made possible by dovetailing all of the above items in relation with the Lord. Described duties of the human being as directed in the Vedas can gradually purify the sinful mind of the conditioned soul and raise him to the stage of knowledge. The purified stage of acquiring knowledge becomes the basis of devotional service to the Lord. As long as one is engaged in researching the solutions to the problems of life, his knowledge is called jnana, or purified knowledge. But on realizing the actual solution of life, one becomes situated in the devotional service of the Lord. The Bhagavad Gita begins with the problems of life by discriminating the soul from the elements of matter, and proves by all reason and argument that the soul is indestructible in all circumstances, and that the outer covering of matter, the body and the mind, change for another term of material existence, which is full of miseries. The Bhagavad Gita is therefore meant for terminating all different types of miseries, and Arjuna took shelter of this great knowledge, which had been imparted to him during the Kurukshetra battle.
Sadvaitam Savadutam Vadijana Saitam Krishna Chaitanya Deva Shri Radha Krishna Padam Sagana Lalita Shri Vishakam Vitam Shra Namam Vishnu Padaya Krishna Vistaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Svaminiti Namine Namaste Saraswate Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nilvishesha Shimyavadi Paschatya
point is that Arjuna is reflecting on the teachings he received from Krishna on the battlefield of Kurukshetra. Just as he was benefited by the personal presence of the Lord, if you can imagine how beneficial that would be to be right there on the chariot with Krishna himself. Just as he was benefited by the direct personal contact with Krishna, he found that recollecting the teachings of Krishna, even after the departure of Lord Krishna, was the same thing as being on the chariot. So this is a very poignant instruction for each and every one of us. Do you ever feel down? You ever feel bewildered or confused? You ever have a bad day? Do you have trouble? Ever have any troubles or anxieties? Anybody ever any troubles or anxieties? No? No? Yeah, we all have troubles and anxieties. So, the point is this. If you can simply remember the teachings of Krishna as given in the Bhagavad Gita, then Krishna is personally there, right there with you. All you have to do is remember the Gita, or hear a recitation of the Gita or the Bagavatam. Then Krishna is personally there with you. The scriptural descriptions of the Lord, the scriptural words by the Lord, etc., all of these scriptures are actually completely non-different from Krishna. When you're associating with the scripture, you're associating with Krishna directly. You see? So this is a very important point that Arjuna, being bewildered, he is now getting the association of Krishna once again, just as he had got it in the battlefield of Kurukshetra. He is being just directly connected now simply by remembering the teachings of the Gita. So just see how potent it is to study the Bhagavad Gita and remember the teachings. One point that jumped out of the page at me, this was wonderful long reading, was Prabhupada's statement. Looking for it again here. He states here that the material activity of the living being is beginningless. I wanted to talk about that a bit. This is why we're called Nitya Baddha, eternally conditioned, because there was no beginning to our activities. So in the material world, so you may say, well, I thought we were going to start off in the spiritual world. So how you can say that our material activities are beginningless? We originally with Krishna in his transcendental presence. There's two. You have to understand, material time is a different dimension. There's no time when you actually fall from the spiritual world. Therefore, there's no time when you enter the material world. That's why, even though at a certain point we did fall from the spiritual world into the material world, because time comes to the point of zero at the junction between the material and spiritual worlds. This is described in one Bhakti-Gita article by Sarupa. The higher you go, the more time slows down. You see. What we experience as 100 years is one thing. Brahma experiences his lifespan, which is 311 trillion years, also is 100 years. So the higher you go, time slows down more and more and more and more. And when you get to the point of where the connection place, the Virajam River, where the material and spiritual worlds meet, at that point, in the Virajam, time is not there. It's zero. So coming to the material world is crossing the Virajam. And there's no time when you cross it, therefore it's beginningless. It's a little hard to conceive, but that's actually how it works. There's no moment in history when you enter in the material world. You can't measure it in material time, that's the point. From the standpoint of material time, your absorption in matter is beginningless. material time functions in a whole different dimension from the activities of the spiritual world. So that's one point, an interesting point. Our absorption in the material nature is without any beginning in material time. But there is actually a dimension beyond material time. And that was our original position. So now we need to get back to that original position. Get out of this material time and get back to that original position. Achieve deathlessness or immortality by taking to heart the teachings of Krishna is our life and soul. We regained our original position before we entered into this, before we left the timeless realm and entered the realm of time. Of course, there's also a time in the spiritual world as described here in this verse. It's a different sort of time than what we have here. In the spiritual world, everything can be happening all at the same time. You can be in whatever lila you want to be. They're all going on simultaneously. So time is there, but in a whole different way than what we know here. But spiritual time and material time are quite different. So there are many, many points here. Are there any questions yet?
Can we understand the time within this material world,
Yeah?
comparing the other living entities with the human living entities?
Compare these human beings? Are you asking a question?
Yes.
They're saying compare the time of the human being with the time of an insect?
Yes, just for like insect, they seem to be, in material world, in this Kali Yuga, everyone is supposed to live for 100 years. And if we see the ant's life is 100 years also.
Yeah, he experiences it 100 years also.
Yes, and at the same time, human beings, 100 years seems a very long time, whereas for the ant, it may be from human being sees as a very small time.
Right, that's right. Good point. Can we offer food that's been cooked by other people who are not Krishna devotees? Generally, the rule would be not to do that, although in certain circumstances it could be done, and there's an exception to the rule. It's a rule not to. Krishna doesn't take food cooked by non-devotees. However, Prabhupada pointed out that there's I don't know if he ever did it, but he actually said in one conversation, you could take prasadam in a restaurant. Let's say you're traveling and there's no food, which you offer to Krishna. That happened to us one time. My wife and I went to work in India. There was a discount center there, and they charged us money for a room to stay, but they wouldn't feed us. They wouldn't give us any prasadam. So we had what could we do? We had to go to a restaurant, and we had to offer the food to Krishna. It was kind of awkward. All the people just stared at it. They all stared at us like we were some guy from outer space or something. Very awkward, but we had to, what could we do? We were all the way out in Dwarka. The devotees wouldn't feed us, so we had to go to a restaurant and buy some food and offer to Krishna. We didn't have a kitchen to cook anything. So sometimes it can be done under emergency, or sometimes the spiritual master will give a concession to a disciple who's living with non-devotees, that he can engage them in cooking the food as for Krishna. Consciously say, okay, can you do this, Mom? My spiritual master wants me to, and Krishna says I can only take prasadam, so if you can cook the food, make a special cooking, and doing it for Krishna. You see. So if the mother agrees, even if she's not a devotee, actually she's becoming a devotee, just by following that instruction. Because now she's cooking and offering to Krishna. She's becoming a devotee. So there are certain circumstances when it could be done. But as a general rule, no, we don't take food cooked by non-devotees. How can we overcome the problem when we could not complete our rounds? You can make them up the next day, Prabhupada said. As I told the trick, if you have trouble completing your round, just tie them in with your eating. Don't eat until you finish your round. I guarantee you get those rounds done every day. You'll find a way to do it. Now, it's not a rule, it's only a suggestion, but it is helpful for those who cannot get their rounds done, who have a problem completing their rounds. Fast until your rounds are done. The theory is the philosophy. The practical is the experience. For example, while the conditioned soul is engaged in activities of sense gratification, philosophically we say that he is in Maya. Life is a series of activities and experiences. What is the value of philosophy? It's like philosophy is to understand the principle. If you want to apply the principle, you have to understand it. The philosophy is you're not that body. To actually engage the body in the service of Krishna, that is the practical application. Your body is not you, nor is it yours. It is the property of Krishna, that is the philosophy. And the practical application of that philosophy then will actually liberate you from material existence. If you don't know the philosophy, then how you can put the philosophy into practice? You understand? The philosophy is required. And practice of that philosophy is required. If you don't have the philosophy, you won't know what to do. You won't be able to do any practice if there's no philosophy. You may do it, but it will be done, even if you do it, it will be blind and it won't have the same benefit. What is the meaning of vastu? It is recommended to a devotee to consult vastu before construction of a house. That's very important. These are some rules and regulations in the Vedas. There is some architectural things. They're actually more materialists. Although devotees now, the Prabhupada didn't do this in building temples. I never heard the Prabhupada consulted the architectural texts in the Vedas to see what direction to build. I never saw that or heard the Prabhupada did such a thing. Not that important, not that necessary. Although some devotees are really into it, they think this would make them more Krishna conscious. Maybe, maybe not. But the thing is, to engage that, the most important thing is to engage the house in the service of Krishna. Just like we're going to be building a temple in Austin, our consideration of how to place the temple will be to make it, parallel to the street, not some weird angle according to Vastu. Just like in all that buildings are made parallel to the street. Our building will also be parallel to the street. I'm not going to consult Vastu, that's not my plan. Is it true that in some parts of the world the ISKCON temple is becoming a Hindu temple? I don't know what that means. If Hindus worship in an ISKCON temple, that doesn't make it a Hindu temple. If devotees abandon the teachings of Prabhupada and they follow, they start doing demigod worship, then it's in ISKCON temple. A Hindu temple. But I don't see that, I don't know any temples that they're doing and giving up, putting all the demigods on the altar. I don't know if any ISKCON temple is doing that. I can't say that there's any ISKCON that I don't know of any ISKCON temple. Although one temple did introduce Durga worship in the Janmashtami book, which is a concern, not proper.
Isn't that doing all the Vedic rituals?
Vedic rituals.
Yeah. Would that be considered as turning into Hinduism? Because
some rituals are there. Some rituals are there. Like Guru Puja, for example, is a ritual. Vedic ritual. Hindu ritual. The thing is, if we stick with Prabhupada's teaching, we'll be okay, but we start adding so many other things, like doing a ritual for material prosperity. I saw one temple doing that. They had the New Year's Day, there was a fundraising for the temple. You pay so much money, and they do a yajna for your material prosperity. This is really getting off the track. Really getting off the track. Those things should be there. We should stick to Prabhupada. Prabhupada gave us. Will each spouse pay for their karma individually? Yes. It's a one-on. It's every man or every woman for himself. When it comes to karma, you can't say, well, I've got married now, so my husband has to take my karma. No. When one spouse continues with karmic rituals, will the other spouse be answerable? I don't know what a karmic ritual is. I mean, karma kanda?
Or demigod worship.
Demigod worship. No, if you're doing devotional service and your spouse doesn't want to do devotional service, you're protected by your devotional service. So, let's see here. Are you, as you mentioned, time is relative and each living entity experiences a lifespan of 100 years. Why 100 years? Why not some other number? Is there any significance to the number 100? It's a nice round number. 100. You have any objection? Anybody object? 100 years. You mentioned that we are all Brahma in the material world at a given time in your last lecture. We know the scripture where this is stated that since Prabhupada's Bagavatam purport, our first birth of the living entity is Lord Brahma. You can look it up in the Bagavatam purport. If you don't know where it is, then just read the whole Bagavatam. Or get the database and look up. Just do a search on the word Brahma in the database and you'll find it. It's there in one of the purports. Our first birth in the material world was Lord Brahma. Each one of you was Lord Brahma when you first entered the material world. And then you came down, 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 down. I know the person who asked the dirty questions yesterday. I can't read this. Something a married lady and mingled with other devotees like nothing and after Shadam, how can sweet, weird person see themselves? Can't read all the handwriting, but yeah, we have to, I mean, people do ask strange questions sometimes. We have to be a little patient and, you know, have to be strong and saying that, be kind with them and help them. Anything else? Let's see, any questions from the internet?
Yes. Shama Priya Devi Dasi.
See, here's the first one. Let's see the first. Look, you've got to scroll up here.
Yes, that's the first one.
Okay. She has two, okay.
Oh, she has two.
Srila Gurudev, in the purport, activities can entrap or liberate the living entity within and without material nature. Please explain within and without material nature. Well, within the material nature means to be caught up in the cycle of birth and death, and without material nature means to be in the spiritual world. Activities, some activities will entrap you, that will keep you engage in sense gratification, that will entrap you more and more in the cycle of birth and death, and if you engage in devotional service, that will liberate you. Now, as far as any activities without the material nature that entrap you, that's not a principle. There's no activities you can do in the spiritual nature that entrap you. There are none. All the activities in the without category, without the material nature, the spiritual nature, all of those activities are liberating. Another question. Bhagavad Gita is a way out of the great entanglements which may embarrass one into some critical hour. What kind of entanglements may embarrass us in what critical hour? Well, the critical hour is the time of, the most critical hour is the time of death. That's the true critical hour we will all face today or tomorrow or next week or next year or next decade or next century, whatever it may be. We're all going to face it. That is the critical hour. So, if you have any material attachment to that critical hour, that will bind you to take birth again in this material world. But Bhagavad Gita will protect you in such a critical hour if you learn to have the Shastric vision, known as Shastra Chaksus, to see everything through the eyes of the scripture. Then when that critical hour of death comes, you'll be able to rise beyond the clutches of forgetfulness and enter into the divine dimension of full Krishna Spadanam. Any other questions? You don't have any questions? You're certified that nobody else has any questions? How do you know? You're reading their minds? You can raise your hand also if you haven't. It's not written down. You can raise your hand. Okay, it looks like the question well has run dry. So we'll stop here. And we thank you all very, very much for your attending this morning's Bagavatam
There is
class.
one
Yeah?
there is
What
one
question,
question. Gabriela,
Okay.
in material world,
Oh, this is Amal. A question from Amal? Another one.
first is
Oh,
from
okay, another one.
Gabriela.
Okay. From Gabriele, okay, in Lithuania. In the material world, the strong are cheating and the weak are cheated. So does a devotee voluntarily agree to be exploited in the world? A devotee avoids being exploited. He only wants to be, he doesn't want to be cheated. Devotee is very expert at avoiding being cheated. He's very aware of the cheating mentality of the material world, and he's very expert at avoiding being cheated. Because he wants that all of his energy should be used in the service of Krishna. It should not be diverted in any way to the material nature. Therefore, he's very expert at avoiding being cheated. So no, the devotee avoids being exploited. And not only that, but his mission is to liberate everyone else from being exploited in the material nature. Basically, the material nature is exploiting in this way. The material nature says, you serve your senses. Serve your senses, your tongue, your belly, your genitals, your false ego. Just serve these senses and I reward you very greatly. So what is the reward? Old age, disease, and death. That's the reward. So the material nature is exploiting us. It's distracting all of our energy to serve these senses, gross and subtle senses. And the reward is simply old age, disease, and death. That is exploitation. It's a royal rip-off. You're being exploited like anything by the material nature. So the devotee says, Maya, I've served you long enough. Maya Devi, I've been exploited long enough, and now my days of serving you are finished. We're breaking up, Maya. Our love affair, I'm breaking off from our love affair with you, and from now on I will only serve Krishna. I will no longer serve you, Maya Devi. I will now only serve Krishna. So in this way, one becomes free from the exploitation of the material nature. Prabhupada uses the word mahatattva. What is mahatattva? Mahatattva is the total material energy. And in Anything else? Question? Okay. I enjoy listening to kirtan, but I realize that I am most attracted to the tune than to the words. Is that an offense? Not really, because the tune is also transcendental. When you use it in Krishna's service, the tune itself is also Krishna. Whenever you engage in Krishna's service, also becomes spiritualized or transcendentalized. It also becomes Krishna. So the tune itself is also Krishna. And it's not wrong to relish in the melody. I mean, look at Prabhupada's bhajans. He sings different bhajans. You can hear the recordings. He sings the nice words, and sometimes he just plays the harmonium. He just goes off a little harmonium. It's very beautiful. Little melodic interlude on the harmonium, so it's beautiful. So if you're attracted to tunes, there's nothing wrong, but you have to understand that the tunes are there to attract you to the melody. Just like here, you see the beautiful altar down here. You have so many things there. You've got the backdrop, you've got the pillars. What are those for? If you're attracted to the pillars and the backdrop, is that wrong? No. Those things are there to help you, to lure you in, so you'll become focused on Krishna. You see. So just as all the trappings on the altar are actually designed to attract you and make it appealing to you, so that you'll take the darshan of Krishna, his outfit, the way he's dressed. You see. These things they all become, because they're used in Krishna's service, they become non-different from Krishna. So in the same way, you see, Krishna is there, he's Krishna, but he's dressed in different ways every day. So the holy name is there, but it's dressed with different melodies. The tune is like the dress. You see. The mantra itself is the deity, and the tunes are the dressing. The mantra is dressed in different tunes, like a dressing, like a deity outfit. Tune is like a different type of deity outfit. So every day there's a different outfit, you see. It becomes very interesting. So we have different tunes also. And actually, you really look at it in a very totally scientific way. Even the same tune, every day we sing it, and it's different. It becomes, every day is a different mood slightly. It's not exactly the same. There's different moods, different tempo, different. The tunes are always different, actually. They're the same tune, done in a slightly different way today than it was yesterday. Just according to the mood, the feeling, or who's leading, or whatever it may be. So the tunes are also transcendental, just like the deity outfit. So it's not an offense to be attracted to the outfit. But if you only care about the outfit, and you don't want to, you just look at the outfit, you don't want to look at Krishna, you just want to look at his outfit, then that's an offense. I don't want to hear the holy name, I just want to hear the tune. That's an offense. If you're relishing the tune and that's helping you to absorb yourself in the mantra, there's nothing wrong. Is it right to chant the Maha Mantra in Hindi movies, song, or other such tune? Actually, there's one tune that I thought was really good. I learned it from Lokanath Maharaj. And later on, I found it was a popular tune from a Hindi movie. I never saw the movie. I learned it from, how's that? Hare Krishna, Hare Rama Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama. I loved the tune. I found it later it was from a Hindi movie. I never saw the movie. Actually, Prabhupada said any tune is good. In Mexico, there's a popular song about the cockroach. Called the cucaracha. In Spanish, it's called the song goes La Cucaracha, La Cucaracha, da 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 da. It's a very popular tune in Mexico. Devotees are going Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. And Prabhupada liked it. They had their guitars in Mexico, and Prabhupada smiled and liked it. So any tune. Any tune is okay. If it's from a Hindi movie, you know.
A Hindi movie, if we know that it is from the Hindi movie and it reminds you of the Hindi movie, what's the point in chanting Hare Krishna?
But if you don't know, you're innocent, you like it.
Yeah, if you're innocent, but you know it is a Hindi movie.
What if somebody believes after that tune, they don't want to chant Hare Krishna, they agree to chant Hare Krishna because you're chanting into that tune. And then it would have some preaching value also.
Yeah, they can get some value, but at the same time meditating on the movie.
Yeah. Okay. All right, next. All right, let's see. Well, that's it. Oh, wait. No, that's it. No, that's all of them. We're finished. There's no more questions? Anything coming in from the internet? No, that's it. All the questions have, so the question well has run dry now. So we'll go ahead and stop here, and we thank you all very much for your attendance at the Bagavatam class, both of you here in Phoenix, Mauritius, as well as those who've come in from different parts of the world, like Lithuania, Latvia, China, different part, Australia also has come on today. Mayapur also, Delhi.
And from Romania.
Romania also, yeah, Romania also, Bangalore. So we thank all of our attendees today who came in via the internet. Tomorrow we'll be back again for more nectar. So we thank you all, and Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama. Shri Bhagavad Ki Jai.
His Grace Srimad Sankarshan Das Adhikari Maharaj ki Jai.